Marita Garrett.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Hello again, everyone. Happy to know more. Funny as everyone's doing introductions, I'm Googling all the things. So I'm trying to hop along with Adrian to South by Southwest. Kendi, you're going to have a blast. Seeing Beyonce, I see her next month in London, but I saw her during Formation Tour. Life-changing. You're going to be staying in all 3 hours. So, all right, let's get into it. And just, again, my info will be on the slideshow. But Vanguard 2017, the Australia cohort, and former elected official and currently the president and CEO of Civically Inc. So let me pull up my slide. Not the most technical savvy, but let's go. Nope. Okay. All right. Is everyone able to see? All right. So let's hop into it. So I'm just curious. I just want to take a couple moments. So when you think of a civically engaged community, what comes to your mind? And we'll take maybe a couple people if you raise your hand. Just you don't even have to raise your hand, just informal. Like when you think of a civically engaged community, what does that mean to you? If your community civically engaged, or you wish your community was civically engaged, or when you think about a civically engaged community, what does that look? Okay, equity. Thank you, Zay. Take a couple more. Diversity of voices, volunteerism, actively participating, inclusion. Okay, we're just spitting them out. Yes, awareness. Yes, all of these things, absolutely. So that's what I essentially see. And that's one of the things is that I don't think that civic engagement looks just one way. It can be a lot of different things. It's all of the things you said. I see engaged in government decision making. So it can be all of these different things, but the one thing that I know, and I believe we all know for sure, is that a civically engaged community is also a healthy and sustainable community, meaning that's one that's not getting written out of the narrative. That's one that is amplifying its needs. It's one that's stepping up to meet its community's needs. So civically engaged, that's a play on for our organization, civically being a play on civically engaged, but also being a civic ally, because we want all those things. We want our communities to know what's going on when there's a public hearing, whenever there's a referendum, what's going on in our code enforcement department, and just being at the pulse of it. Because what we see in communities, I'll get to more of the demographics of the community specifically that I serve, is that under-resourced communities, which tend to be more so represented by Black and Brown communities, are the ones that are getting disinvested, and that just any type of businesses are coming through and code and zoning isn't necessarily being enforced. But if you were to go to specifically in our Pittsburgh area, some of the more affluent neighborhoods, you don't see that. Community members have a say in, okay, no, we're not getting another Dollar General. We're not getting another convenience store. What we are aiming for is a Aldi or a Trader Joe's, businesses that are sustainable, but also increase the healthiness and livelihood of a community. So why civically? So for some of those things that I had just said, again, you're creating sorry, I'm trying to get my slide back up. We're creating a community that is viable, but also, I always like to say, you got to read the room. How do we increase civic engagement when there are basic needs that aren't being met? So I want everyone to go to a council meeting, and I want people to join the Parks and Recs board and, be at the table. But if folks are worrying about, oh, I don't have a place to live, I don't have food on my table, I don't have a roof over my head, my kids don't have good quality education, the last thing on their mind is going to be, I need to participate in this community meeting, or I need to show up here. It's for them at times about survival. So what does it look like when we can go from survival to thrival? And that's exactly what I saw during my tenure of running or being a council person and then mayor of Wilkinsburg. So Wilkinsburg is a small, it's considered a municipality, a borough that neighbors the city of Pittsburgh, so much so that there's parts of Wilkinsburg where one side of the street is the city of Pittsburgh and one side is Wilkinsburg. So we are really like intertwined. And so that when I ran for council back in 2013 and won, as I say, still wet behind the ears. I'm like, okay, we're going to get people to council meetings. They're going to show up. Everyone's going to be active, going to join these boards. But come to find out, life's still going on. We meet Wednesday nights. We meet at like 7 p.m. That's prime dinner time. If you've worked a full job or if you're getting ready for your second shift, you picked your kids up from school, you're worrying about dinner. Last thing you're thinking about is this council meeting happening in these dusty borough chambers, and especially because we don't provide food. So had to take a step back, like, okay, my background's in community outreach, and one of the tenets that I always live by is you got to meet people where they're at. And so that's immediately where it was like, all right, you know what? Let's bring council meetings to the people. So launched an initiative called Community Conversations. We would meet quarterly throughout different parts of Wilkinsburg. And the first thing I did after figuring out where I was going to hold the meeting was food. Who's catering? If I'm asking people to give up a nighttime, we're going to provide some food, not a little cheese tray. We're going to get some hearty dinner to make them come. And they came and they kept coming. And then from there, that's where I was able to listen to community members' needs and hear them and hear that, jobs are an issue. Access to these items are an issue. Just things that you can pick up, granted, one of the things that I love about Wilkinsburg is we have a lot of social services. We have, whether it's counseling or satellite learn and earn, WIC programs, things of that sort. But we know with government, this is pre 2025, but we know anything with government runs slow. So what about the folks who are like, I just need a blazer for a job interview. My baby just needs some baby formula. I need a book. I need clothes, like just that immediate need. And that's what some of our programs focus on. But essentially, the line is that we're trying to remove barriers to access. So now let's get a little bit to Wilkinsburg, where I currently live, reside. So as I mentioned, about 14,000 residents, and we're only 2.2 square miles. But let me tell you, every bit of that 2.2 square miles is spelt because not only do we border the city of Pittsburgh, we border a few other municipalities, and it's very, very tight. So I say that because even though we're only 2.2 square miles, our main street where the Free Store and where Civically headquarters is located at, our main street gets about 50,000 cars on a weekly basis. Then we also serve as a transportation hub, as you'll see at the bottom of the slide, where we have 2 bus stations located on the busway, which is it's not really a rail, but it's a big hub of our public transit here in Allegheny County. And similar to neighboring communities in our region, we experience the negative effects of the steel mill decline. So for those who may or may not be familiar with Pittsburgh, we're still called the Steel City. That's because of the steel that went on Carnegie, US Steel, all of the things. But one of the things is that part of that decline, we have I think we're at about the third or fourth highest tax rates in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Our school district has gotten a little better, but again, not to justify the high taxes. Then we have flight to the suburbs. But what I always tell people, it's not just white flight. There was a lot of black flight, especially during the late 80s and the 90s with the drug epidemic, gang violence, and all those things. And in 2016, I need to update this. 2016, 18% of our properties were considered to be vacant and abandoned. Sadly, I wish that number had gone down, but it's actually increased to about 21%. And just as we know, sometimes perception is reality. So a lot of times on the news, people will come out here real quick when there's something bad happening, if this thing is closing, if there's a shooting, yet not highlighting some of the small businesses and the work that's being done to revitalize this borough. So, what Civically essentially does is that we promote civic engagement by working to eliminate poverty, food insecurity, and increase economic mobility through accessible programs that address the basic and immediate needs of our community members within the greater Wilkinsburg and Pittsburgh Easton region. And honestly, how we just phrase it is if you can make it out to our programs, you can access it. We say that for our mission and our service because that's where we're located, but especially since the to me, we're still in the pandemic, but especially since the end of the height of the pandemic, we have people coming to travel because, again, we don't require proof of income. We don't require any form of ID. It's truly about removing any barriers to access. And so next is a video that I think it's only 2 minutes, but it pretty much summarizes the work that we do and kind of gets more to the gist of what I'm talking about that better than my slides can say. So let me play this. Is everyone able to, let me see, everyone able to hear? All right, wonderful. So I'm gonna turn my video off. Civically Inc. is an umbrella nonprofit where we focus on community development in terms of investing in the people. And what that looks like is addressing the basic and immediate needs of our community members. And we do that through such programming as the Free Store Wilkinsburg and Free Store Fresh Market and our Career Closet. Every Saturday at the Free Store, we service about 150 community members. We have the Fresh Market that services 200 family members. All of our programs mostly are open to the public and they're free. So people are at the center of what we do. And truthfully, that's the heart's work. I believe that the pandemic showed us we're all one paycheck away from uncertainties, from maybe being unhoused, underemployed, unemployed. So it's really key and important that we are taking care of our community because that really is what we have. So since the height of the pandemic, a lot of disparities that we were already seeing have been exacerbated, and especially in lower income communities and especially in those that tend to have a majority Black population, which the Wilkinsburg region does. So with that, the increased need also increases the work that we do. So some of the barriers that civically ourselves we face are just capacity because these needs become overarching. It can be lonely in the nonprofit sector. Again, the work we're doing is rewarding work. It is our heart's work, yet that doesn't mean it makes it any less hard. There are a multitude of ways to support civically, whether that is financial, in kind, but even further than that, volunteering and partnerships, because, partnerships, there's a power in partnerships. So there's a plethora of ways to assist where you can keep building to make a sustainable region for all. So as you saw, let me turn my video back on. Okay. So that was a quick video that kind of summarizes, you get to see the feel of the Free Store and in there, as you see on this slide where we have programs such as the Career Closet and Counseling. And that was launched in 2023 because now that, a little bit past COVID or the height of the pandemic, folks getting back to the workforce. Where do I start? A lot of people got laid off or was doing remote work, but just getting back to finding out, how to hone those skills. So we have a partnership with a local college, Chatham University, where once a semester, or I'm sorry, we work semester long with a doctoral student who serves as a career counselor. And then they offer interview tips, resume review. Then we also sometimes partner with local stylists to, just give folks it's kind of cliche, but you look good, you feel good. So helping folks in styling, whether it's for an interview coming up or whether it's just to refresh their professional wardrobe. You see the fresh market on there. And then civically speaking, we're getting back to our civic engagement platform because of the type of work that we do. There was such a heightened need to meet the thank you, Rashonda. There was such a heightened need to meet folks' direct needs. So we were open in the free store multiple times a week. We were giving out produce and kind of got away from civic engagement and having discussions on what's going on. But especially because all of that is going on at current level, we know the needs. Civics 101. A lot of people didn't apparently know what a tariff was. A lot of people don't know what an executive order is. And that goes for adults, but especially the kids. So what we're launching this summer, that none of the slides reflect that, but we're doing a Civically Summer Academy focusing on youth from 14 to 19, just Civics 101 basics, because we know with the youth and the babies, that's how we can get the adults in. So having them start the conversations like, mom, the importance of elections or voting, or just what is a city? What is a town? What are the operations of that? So that we can get folks more engaged. I'm still not sure how civics got out of our curriculum, but it's more than time to get it back. So that's one of the things, in addition to focusing on addressing the direct needs, definitely expanding and getting back to civic education, I should say. And so just a little bit about our impact. The Free Store Wilkinsburg has been in existence since 2015, so we're actually celebrating our 10th year. The Fresh Market since 2018. So the numbers don't lie. And for those, my fellow nonprofit founders, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I started this, I was hoping that the world's problems would be solved in 10 years and that we wouldn't need to continue this. I'm like, oh, imagine a world where you don't need the free store. Imagine the world where you don't need the free store, fresh market, and things. But we're here. This is where we're at. So it's truly a blessing to continue to be a blessing and have that framework where we already know moving into action. We know needs are going to be increased over these next 4 years, but we're ready, and our demonstration, not even our demonstration, but our foothold in the community shows we're not going anywhere. And so one of the things is, and again, my fellow nonprofit founders can relate, nonprofit is not for the weak. The rat race, the nonprofit industrial complex, the year to year, the actually month to month, trying to fundraise, keep the lights on, all of these things. The foundations say they love the work we do. Oh, we see the impact. See the previous slide, showed you the impact, all of these things. But it's not in our funding priority this year. Or we gave you 15,000 last year. Why didn't that stretch out? Well, that covers our light bills for the building because we own our building, but we own our building. So we're working to redevelop in the Hunter building, which is the largest commercial building in the central Wilkinsburg district. And it's about 22,000 square feet. And so I feel like I heard someone in the introduction, someone in here is working on a mixed use redevelopment project. Definitely would love to touch base. But it's about ownership, right? So one of the things in Wilkinsburg, we've suffered from decades of disinvestment. Yet I'm starting to see things turn around. We just got an Aldi down the street. There's some other redevelopment projects going on. And we know that people will pay for what they want to pay for. Those who have the resources to afford our high taxes and afford to redevelop a building will do it. But the question is, will the community members who have been in this community be a part to see that? And so we purchased this building to make sure that our existing community members while wanting to make space for, folks who want to come in because we are welcoming, but primarily making sure that existing community members have a place and do not get written out of the narrative of the future of Wilkinsburg. And also to make sure we have a place in the services that we provide to continue helping our community members. So in that, we've been able to secure, I should say, not awarded, but we've been able to secure 2.5 million in state funding. And we've been working to match that over the past couple years. I'm excited to announce that within the next, thank you, within the next few months, we'll be able to unlock our first million. So that will really be able to start construction and demolition on a couple of the parcels. But ultimately, we see the Hunter Building as a community hub, a place where folks can gather, where community members can get resources. So we want to see the coffee shops locally owned. We want folks to feel that they can start a business and not have to worry about, is rent's going to go up and all of these different things. But most importantly, civically, well, I shouldn't say most importantly, but in conjunction, importantly, we want to make sure we have room to breathe so we know that we can service the community another 10 years and that we don't continue with this stopgap. So that's a little bit about the Hunter Building. And kind of what I say, like civically, or my mind, I operate from a present to the future. That's securing the community and civically's viability in the future as well, too. I think we only have a couple more slides. Oh, that is it. So there is my information for folks who want to stay in contact. I dropped my LinkedIn in the chat earlier today, or earlier in this. We are earlier in there, but please, I would love to stay connected because honestly, someone touched on it. Next City alums, it does feel like an extended family. And I'm just so in awe of all the work that we have done, that we will continue to do. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share more about my work today. So thank you. And I will give it back over to Sarah.
Thank you so much. And incredible work. Yeah, we have so much to learn from you and so many ideas to continue spreading across our communities. And I constantly am thinking about Atlantic City as a place that could garner some momentum. So I may reach out soon to talk a little bit more about that. And let us move on to our next presentation, which is with Zay.
I'm ready. Give me a second. And yes, in the interim, I can't wait to. It's been another reason to come back. So give me a second, and I'm gonna share my audio, right?
Yes, and you were breaking up there for a second, but I think it's okay now.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. All right. All right. So I'm Zay, Isaiah Little. You might hear maybe not today, but Poppy Dough when I am DJing. So yes, I'm a man of many hats. And this presentation is, I would say maybe like this presentation is like an informal, I guess, check on my business plan, right? I had to remind myself, what did I sign up for? Who am I talking to? And what am I supposed to be saying? So I think that this is kind of abnormal presentation than I would typically, because it's either, career day or, we're pitching for, as Marita was saying, we're trying to get the bag to support these big ideas. And it is very much different talking points. But I think, similar to at least one other, group akin to Vanguard, not exactly the same. It's a little bit of a relief to kind of talk about these conversations, share, tools and frameworks, right, from a slightly different context. So shaping place through story, tools for community-centered change. My personal story. This is essentially how I feel most of the time. like a man with a trash bag, and I don't know, what are little garbage pickers. But there's a little bit more to the story. I literally started my creative career on the street in this building. I started my education in this building. And this building is coincidentally on the southern end of Halsey Street, right? So if you Google Newark, New Jersey, somewhere, somehow, one of the many institutions will be pushing you to Halsey Street, but they're not going to be pushing you to the southern end of Halsey Street. It's not necessarily shiny, cute, and with the coffee shops just yet. But it's kind of one of those things where, have literally seen the revitalization of Newark's downtown. Being, a young old man, some of the, essential buildings such as Prudential Center, such as NJ Pack, I literally saw those things come up. So I remember a downtown, a Newark, a New Jersey without some of the um, new accoutrements, new institutions, new players. And I would love to kind of like even just stay on here for one more second and zero in on this little plaque in the background, if you can see it there. This is a former nonprofit. I think it was in some way it was a service center, a nonprofit for women. And the plaque says the truest charity trains the people to help themselves. And that just rang out to me because I've literally been passing by this plaque my entire life. And it is resounding, and it sort of sees itself through all of the work that I do. I think people want to be able to fish. They don't want you to provide the fish for them, right? So before I move on, I'll just leave you. Well, I'd like to open up with a quote from a amazing philosopher who's no longer with us, Nipsey Hussle. The biggest business you'll ever manage is your own life. Before anything else, before work, money, or goals, you have to take care of yourself. Your life is the foundation. If it's not in order, nothing else will be. So manage your time, energy, and choices wisely because if your life runs right, everything else starts to fall into place. Um, just wanted to open up with that to kind of like settle us in that this work oftentimes is thankless. Sometimes there's a ribbon cutting, sometimes, you get an applause, but I think many times there's a million and one small decisions that we have to make when people are watching. Many times the biggest and most important ones when we think people are not watching. So I think no better place to start than with ourselves before we serve, the community. So with that, storytelling is infrastructure. We might be familiar with water, we might be familiar with roads, we might be familiar with power stations, and I'm pretty sure we have some other, policymakers and legislators here. But here in Newark, I know that, politicians are very familiar with potholes, not very familiar with tourism. I think we sometimes value, the prudential centers of the world, the performing arts centers, and not so much language, not so much cultural heritage, or these institutions that, especially during COVID, right, were the closest to the community and were the best able to pivot and serve those community in times of emergency or crisis. So it just makes me think of, especially as a creative entrepreneur, locally, is it High Street or is it Martin Luther King Boulevard? In Philadelphia, North Philly, is it Cecil B. Moore Avenue or is it Columbia Avenue? Another hot topic, at least for myself and my family, when I got home from Newark, got home from Philadelphia, back to Newark after attending Temple University, um, everyone was calling it the Ironbound, where I swear I left for school, it was called Down Neck. So there was in those few years of me being away, some rebranding, some I would say real estate marketing, where culturally there was a shift where the East Ward is no longer what we called it. Now we call it the Ironbound, when the Ironbound is a neighborhood within the East Ward. So example in which I've I guess dived in to this with my work is development of a Black travel show called Black Ass Place, where Zay and comrades go to the blackest places on earth, highlighting the historical and cultural significance of those places, while highlighting how you can support Black businesses, especially while you're on those travels. How can we capture Black narratives in an authentic fashion, not just of Newark, but around the world, while highlighting how these communities are living, evolving, and dynamic? The framework, narrative ecosystems, personal, local, collective, and historical stories. Civic literacy is a creative practice. As we already shared or already learned, this will be a theme, right? Many residents don't see themselves in local government, but culture workers can bridge those gaps. And that can look a myriad of ways, right? That could be from similar to what we've done with, let me back up, Nook First Fridays, my monthly arts and cultural festival, and members only happy hour, which is a weekly happy hour experience from 6 to 8, right in the downtown of Newark. We leverage these experiences to create civic touch points. Very often, folks are already having spirited conversations over sangria or rosé. Why not try to channel that into a voter registration drive, which we've done with our happy hours? Why not utilize this time, 2 3 hours that we're together, to encourage folks to be reminded of the upcoming I guess you could say civic on ramps. I've been in the same situation where, community meetings can be either entertaining, very distracting, or very lonely. So I think there's definitely, some ways in which we can meet people where they are, via creative placemaking, making a moment, or just being able to translate. I feel, with my lived experience, much of my work is translating from, maybe the proletariat to the specialist and back to the specialist to the layman. I think we often, we all need the same things, shelter, clothing, etc. I think very often we just need to learn how to translate or communicate, those needs to one another. Sometimes that's just civic engagement. Sometimes that's just support. Creative placemaking is more than an aesthetic. It's about community memory, equity, and economic development. And I underscore economic development. There's an awesome, nonprofit here based in Newark where I pretty much long-term borrowed one of their taglines, where there's no movement if there's no money, right? Very often, exactly. You keep borrowing that one. Yeah, take that one. So yeah, essentially, we have all these amazing ideas, but we aren't actually able to implement them without the right resources. Or sometimes we're able to get it off the ground, but we have to restart it or have to pivot to change, move into that grant, round square peg hole. So members only happy hour is our flagship Patreon benefit. Our Patreon is nominal, blah, blah, blah. We essentially call it our Netflix for community programming. If you're able to give Netflix $10 to $12 a month, we're asking for as little as $2 and $7 a month to support regular community programming. We squeeze and stretch those $2 to support at least two DJs every Wednesday, which is again aiding the creative economy. We offset the cost of our festival Nook First Fridays, where there's local vendors, there's performers, and this is a citywide activation. So we encourage folks to join as official stops, so that if you are a young man who's graduating or a young person graduating from Westside High School, which is very far from the downtown, business district, you're able to market alongside NJ alongside staple, comedy shows such as the Brick City Comedy Review, for a nominal dollar, as well as encouraging folks to move the dollars around um, in an economical, equitable way. So the framework there is people, power, place, the triangle that guides community-led practice. Um, I will get to my favorite part in a second. I can't see that. A few tools and frameworks. I don't always remember that this is what I'm doing, but this is great practice to remind myself, this was in my business plan. Exactly. The 4 Ps of community-centered projects. People, who holds the knowledge and lived experience? Place, what stories are embedded in that space? Power, what decisions are being made and by whom? And then the practice. How are you making your process participatory? I won't show these videos real quick. I'm just going to jump to the next one where I show at least 2 bits of my favorite recent projects.
Calling our future. Calling all artists, believers, deep thinkers, pioneers, poets, those who shift the culture deeper into the real, the authentic, the true. Calling the bold, the bright, the brilliant, the beautiful, the creatives, the inventors, trailblazers, difference makers.
Oh, let's go. Come on, push it.
All who hear impossible and have to ask,
What is that?
no, seriously, what is that? Calling the next generation of designers, rocket scientists, world-class athletes, influencers, Pulitzer Prize winners, chess grandmasters, A-list actors, titans of industry, you name it. This is the place to be. Welcome to Newark Public Schools. Let's go to work.
This is Mayor Raz J. Baraka. Welcome to Newark, city of bricks, full of love stories of Willie the Lion Smith and Sassy Vaughn and the Moss Theater and Amiri Baraka and Emily Miles, home of NJ Pack and the Prue Center of the Newark International Airport and the second largest seaport in the country. This is Newark, finest Portuguese food this side of the tri-state area. If you ain't been here, you ain't been nowhere.
All right. So yes, that is my mayor. That is my city. Let me get to this next. Oh, there we go. All right. So because I won't play again, those are 2 recent projects that I'm uber proud of. The last one to go in oldest to most recent is the first Newark tourism video ever. Super excited to be one of the producers on that project. What I'm supposed to say is that it's award-winning. What I'm supposed to say, over millions and millions of impressions. What I'm most proud about is there's probably 101 Easter eggs in there. If you're a kid from the greater Newark, greater, Essex County area that you see yourself in, you hear the music, you're like, oh, I know that. Oh, that's Jersey Club. Oh, so I think there's a sense of pride that obviously, folks receive from seeing themselves and hearing their voices in a piece of work. And I think that more than anything, not even the social boost, the paid boost on Instagram, but I think folks being able to see themselves was what helped that to be as amplified as widely as it has been. Similarly to the Newark Public School projects, what I'm supposed to say is the millions and millions of impressions. What I'm supposed to say is how they're doing another project based on the Newark Data Science School. But one of the things I'm most proud about, especially one of their goals, is they were able to exceed their teaching hiring goals year over year. Partly, I would say partly because of them leaning into creating authentic storytelling, amplifying these stories, going as close as we can to the students and the parents. And I'll keep going because this is part of the reason why. Cultural asset mapping, aka I call this get on the bike. And sometimes, whether you haven't ridden a bike in a while, maybe, you're not necessarily from this particular community, but this is essentially what I did when I moved back to Newark from Temple. I was essentially in, Philadelphia for 5 years for school, the Temple 5-year program, and then I was hanging out for another 2. So when I came back home, I was removed completely almost from the creative scene, and I needed to literally familiarize myself again with who the players were, where were the institutions, how can I contribute before giving my assumptions right on what people need. I literally bought a bike from the bike shop downtown and started traversing the city, familiarizing myself with the cultural activations, the cultural curators, especially at that time, and essentially continue to, not only just build my network, but familiarity and credibility from being consistent. A participatory method to locate people, places, and narratives that matter. What already exists and how can it be amplified? I think one of my favorite things or practices for folks, whether I'm leading a team or following, is what are our privileges? How can we check those privileges, especially in people-centered conversations? And then how, if possible, are we able to create space or leverage that privilege to amplify or create opportunities for others? Has been instrumental in, the growth and success in my own career. In narrative arcs, I think, very often, like a journalist, we love, first person, accounts. Maybe that's yourself, maybe that's a loved one, maybe that's from research. So what was witnessed? What is the memory? And how can we turn that into an activation? I think very often, community, or sometimes community is personified as just complaining, or why isn't such and such. I think if we're able to channel that into not only something that is tangible, but an activation, something that folks can kind of see, I think it helps with us to preserve certain aspects of cultural heritage. And I sort of give one example in, the Nook First Fridays, the monthly arts and our monthly art market. It has been an intention to include some staples that are not necessarily located downtown Newark. If you've ever been to Newark, I definitely encourage you to try an Italian hot dog, an Italian cheeseburger. I would definitely put those up to a Philly cheesesteak any day. I'm being controversial today, but I think it's important for us to not only highlight things that we think are valuable, especially various aspects of our cultural heritage. But if we aren't amplifying, that culture, if we aren't providing, spaces for folks to engage and learn, we're kind of setting it up to be lost. And the last thing, plus, if it makes sense, that's even better. If your idea is able to make dollars and sustain itself, I think that provides even more chance for it to be sustainable and for it to not, I guess, say, be easily swayed and diverted from its original purpose. Us leaning into Patreon and essentially allowing our community to become our bosses has been instrumental in us being not only consistent for the last 3 years with our happy hour, but this is actually our ninth season with Nook First Fridays, an independent, the only monthly independent festival in the greater Newark area. So I'll leave you with a couple more things that get out your way. What's possible when we lead with culture? As the great Tupac Shakur said, I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. In this work, keep the numbers. It helps with us getting more finances, more dollars, more resources. But sometimes in this work, success doesn't always look like a startup with 10x fold, 10x returns. Another sort of like exercise that I think is super helpful is how can your big idea impact a million lives? Changed my life when I first heard this in 2015. Just imagining how many more tickets I would need to sell, how much more advocacy for, at that time, the small dollar amounts that I was seeking. So it just forces you to be a little bit more creative. And again, all success doesn't look alike. Is it needed to impact a million lives? It kind of makes me think again, if I'm able to reach that one person that with the swipe of a pen can change a million lives, maybe I just need to get to that right person. So success can look very different, especially depending on our goals. So my three boiled down takeaways: culture is a form of infrastructure, stories shape policy and perception, and I'm near my way. You have the tools and responsibility to take you have the tools and responsibility to shape what comes next. Call to action. You're not just an entrepreneur, you're not just a planner, you're not just a creative, you're a civic architect. Um, I'll just leave you with this gift because it kind of speaks for itself. We're living in a time where, things are uncertain. There's more than ever miscommunication, purposely, accidentally. So I think with not only the work that we were doing prior to COVID, prior to what is it, 45, 47, whatever number the president we are in, I think it's uber important for us to make those hard decisions, take care of ourselves, and continue to hold our integrity. Thank you for my time. You can scan that little QR code there. And I also drop my LinkedIn in the chat.
Beautiful. Thank you. It's so great to see how far things have progressed since I saw you last in Newark. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you were right on time. All right, we'll move over to Mo. And also, I just want to note that everyone volunteered to present. So Zay and Marita's work, although it's aligned, that was completely by chance. So that's it.
Can you see that? Is it working?
Yes.
Ah, perfect. I don't have any videos, which I feel like I'm in a disadvantage. Everybody had a fantastic videos to share, and I don't have any. And it's also, I think my my piece is a little bit aligned to like what Zay is kind of talking about stories. So I'm gonna start here. So I guess in the recent years, we have seen a dramatic rise in natural disasters, from like tsunamis, hurricanes, and then most recently with the wildfires. However, in the aftermath of those events, stories emerge, stories of hope, stories of strength, and then stories of community resilience. These stories are powerful tools for recovery and resilience. They can connect people, inspire action, and help shape a shared path forward. So again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mo. I am a director here at Public Works Partners. We are a WBE, DBE certified urban consultancy based in New York City. We have an office out in Southern California. I am a Newark alum for Vanguard and a proud NYU Wagner alum. I specialize in designing frameworks that promote community health and resilience through equity-centered storytelling, recovery planning, and just general systems change. Outside of public works and my work in general, I'm a fish. I'm an avid surfer and an ocean conservationist, which keeps me really grounded on the nature and community. So I'm here today to kind of talk to you about a new thing that we're kind of working on, which is a storytelling framework for recovery and resilience. So technically, in recovery and resilience work, storytelling helps community process, heal, and rebuild together. When aligned with local traditions, storytelling becomes an even more powerful. It feels familiar, trusted, and meaningful. Our framework emphasizes four core values, which I'll get into in later, which really makes effective storytelling. So that's authenticity, inclusivity, hope and resilience, and actionability. When grounded in these principles, storytelling is more than a narrative. It's a catalyst for collective recovery and lasting system change. So why storytelling, and why does it matter, and why does it matter now? In this kind of work, facts matter, but stories move people to action. Storytelling bridges healing and action. It builds trust, elevates marginalized voices, and transforms planning from top down to community driven. We've found storytelling especially powerful in post-crisis settings, whether it's natural disasters, displacements, or just general social trauma. So as I mentioned, we have, a guiding principle for this framework. And it's grounded on these four main things, which is pretty much authenticity. That's like stories that come from the community, not about the community, because most of the time we hear about stories about the community rather than it's coming from the folks that are from who experienced the actual disaster, the calamities, or the event. There's also the sense of inclusivity, so making sure that all voices are heard, especially those who are most impacted. That's why we care about the story that's coming from the community. Hope and resilience, so that stories to eliminate strength, not just the struggle of a disaster. So really in the aftermath, when you see the brotherhood and the fraternity and the sororities and the connection between people really come out. And then actionability, that's the stories that informs the concrete steps. So how does this work? So we have a 5 points, kind of like phases that kind of go through it, which is pretty much heal, collect, amplify, mobilize, and contextualize. To kind of give a little bit more idea of like what this is, heal is preparing the community for storytelling. So that's number one. Before you can actually, plan for something, you want to make sure everything is grounded. You want to make sure everyone is safe. They have the right support that they need after that disaster, that calamity, that chaos that they had. And then from there, we can move to collect. And that's where stories are gathered through interviews, circle forums, or digital submissions. You want to be as fluid in the collection of information here. So we use different type of tools to kind of make sure that it doesn't matter if you're submitting a photo, an Instagram post, or a poem. There's a way to kind of collect those information and make use of them. Amplify is the share stories publicly to build agency and momentum and the solidarity. So it's really about contextualizing that to, so I went up to amplify, I forgot about contextualize, which is the analysis of the story. So looking for the patterns where actually it makes sense, what are the key things that kind of emerges, and then from there you kind of amplify those key trends so that you can move folks to kind of mobilize them to translate the stories into actual actions, policy, or recovery and strategies. So in doing this work, we use a lot of tools. So in terms of like digital story platforms, StoryCorps, Padlet, and Otter AI has been really helpful. Padlet in general is great because that's a multimedia. So literally you can put music, videos, photos, poems, any written document, and it pulls information together to really look for that common themes that kind of emerges. In terms of data analysis, we have a blend of information that we use to analyze information to really figure out what are the commonalities, what are the key trends that are emerging, and tools that can be used over and over again. And then many of these are free and you don't have to pay for them so that any community members can actually use them. Engagement tools like Zoom, meetings and surveys are the ones that we use to kind of gather the information and to also have those community circles. And of course, to kind of heal, Calm Health is a good tool to kind of have just to kind of like figure out how to brace yourself or to kind of ground yourself after the recovery efforts. So how do you actually apply this framework? So applying this framework is kind of like twofold. So you can apply it in the post-crisis recovery, where we use the story to rebuild trust and shape local connection. So that's like the space to heal, to really inform the community support, and to really realize what's happening now and how can we inform the stories to kind of move forward with some kind of an action. And then in the resilience building, the stories are used to identify risk, inspire preparedness, and really create a network that has been created. So kind of like a co-ad post-Sandy was really momentum to this. So how can we use past events to really move forward into something that can be lasting and sustainable over time? If the framework is applied correctly, there are certain things that we can see through results. So we can see a strengthening of trust when communities feel that they are seen, included, and invested. There is a greater sense of equity. Stories are bringing underserved groups into the decision-making process. Actionable insights. So planners get real and community-grounded data. And then, of course, the momentum. So stories that spark long-term partnerships and policy shifts. So those are the things that we want to see if this is applied correctly. And how do we measure them? So in terms of like strengthening trust, we look at pre and post survey, we look at the event participation of diverse groups, any sentiments of analysis from public feedback, and then for the, for driving equity, it's really looking around the demographic and the participation, and then what's the baseline and how it kind of changed. The outreach that's been done to really drive inclusive voices into the planning process. And then in creating actionable insights, where has the story been cited? What are the new programs or new policies being created based on the story that's being told? and what are the stakeholder feedback that's being used. And then in terms of building momentum, this is where the action really is. So that's where you want to see more money for recovery efforts, new drills, new plans, new programs to really move recovery forward, and then just like ongoing commitment from the community partners. So I guess that's pretty much what we have that I have to share for this afternoon. It's an experiment that we are working on. So here's my contact information. Would love to hear your thoughts about it if you have any. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So turning it back to Sarah.
Thank you. We have about 20 minutes here just to open up a conversation or do Q&A. So I'd like to open it up to folks to raise their hand if you have questions for any of our speakers.
Did we just speak up?
Yeah, just jump on. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all for that really wonderful presentation. I was taking copious notes, and I'm hoping that the decks will be shared with us so that we can have the information for ourselves. My question is for Mo. I'm really fascinated by this connection between storytelling, cultural heritage, and particularly climate resilience. And I'm wondering, but I find that oftentimes when working with communities around resilience, that it's not all the term, isn't it? Sometimes it could be quite technical, all the terms and concepts and ideas, and even just like what the issue is, there has to be some learning and education in that. And so I'm wondering, how do you sort of navigate that knowledge exchange, or just like helping people understand what the challenge is before you even get into the storytelling?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is a translations. So from where we work, our role typically is to be the translator between the experts. Well, I mean, like the technical experts and the community. So how do we actually make everything in a plain form language so that everybody understands, especially if you are recovering from trauma? So if it's going to be, if visual is helpful, so we will communicate the process in a visual way. If a much more, I guess, layman terms is helpful, then we will figure out how to do that. If other languages is necessary, then we will provide that translations. So I think really identifying the group that's affected, and then really trying to distill what is the critical information and sharing it to them in a way that they would understand it, especially when you are in shock post a crisis, because it takes time to kind of deal with this. That's why, from what I understand, when survivors are filing for insurance claim, they tend to miss a lot of things because of the technicality of the process. It's not actually explained well. So I think by taking the time and the care to actually explain the process, it's like what's going to happen and how we are going to use their stories and collect the stories, then it will be a partnership rather than just me telling you what I want from you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, I'll follow up with another question. It's for all of you. We're in a period right now where a lot of organizations are losing funding for work like this. And so I don't know if you guys have thoughts, ideas of just, where's the money coming from to do this very important, or continue this very important work, even though it seems our federal government doesn't think it's so important anymore.
Well, a blessing and a curse is that we never really received money from the federal government, and we usually don't get much money, so we're used to making something out of nothing. So it's more so business as usual. It sadly, I mean, sadly, that's why I tell people it would have been nice to have gotten some money and everything, but yet we just never have. And we did put in for the EPA grant, but that was like around November. And but my heart really goes out for those who were promised it and then got it taken away and like waiting for a reimbursement. So I that's where I'm like, I'd rather not have the money than get the money and then it gets snatched back. But all that to say, it just makes us, it makes me more so go even harder. Cause it's like now, and just as Black women, where you always used to be on the front lines, this is nothing new to us, and that's maybe how I operate from a space. Like, this is same different day, same stuff. It's just now it's being amplified because those who aren't the 1% of billionaires are feeling it. So people now more understand the plight of being a Black led, community led organization, and now want, for better or worse, now want to band together. It's like, oh my gosh, like, how can we support, how can we connect, because y'all are feeling, they are feeling it too. So in that, it just makes me know everything's even more timely. And starting last year, we really shift to more individual donors, like those who can give the 20s recurring or the 500s. Like, that's where we've shifted. And thankfully, that's kind of what sustained us. Now we do get state grants for more of the capital projects. And so in the Commonwealth of PA, our state legislature, we have a tight, oh, that's right, we're nonpartisan. Nonetheless, those who are doing the right thing have a small lead. So thankfully, and we have a great governor and Governor Shapiro. So thankfully, state funding projects haven't been affected. So we're still able to move forward with like the community development and some of that work that gets funded through the state. So that's been kind of my experience, but definitely there's been more call to action among everyone who's been affected by it, instead of just be like, oh, well, just keep writing the grant, you'll see. It's like, no, they're feeling it too. So there seems to be more room for collaborations.
Yeah. So I think, from my sense, this is the time for philanthropy to step up. So where the government is taking, the philanthropy community should be filling it up. That's why I'm moved by the Gates Foundation's goal to kind of like step up now and then invest more. I hope that other foundations are thinking the same way, because there's our critical support, there's our critical things that needs to happen, and they have to be funded. And if federal government is not doing it, it has to come from somewhere. And I think this is the perfect time to shine for those philanthropists who are really interested in communities.
Yeah, I'll just sort of echo what Marita said. Gotta be creative. I am a creative entrepreneur, so I have a for-profit business, which is sometimes a pain point for folks that want to give you money because they want to be able to write it off, so they really didn't give you the money. But um in relation to being creative, I think that that has been a asset, and a necessity, right? There has been projects that I am on or have been on, where they had to change the language in order to continue to give us the funding. um Luckily, none of the projects had to change the language where I had to step away from the project, because we know that there's many of them where there's no DEI, there's no such and such, so they can't necessarily support certain things. One of my most fascinating thrillers to watch is the impact on the arts institutions and how they're pulling back support for certain projects, which is like, I love to see that. But I think in another example, working as a minority partner in a comedy club and nightclub here in Newark, owned by majority, Newarkers, et cetera, the stories that you want to amplify and push. There was some issues with a small business loan for one reason or another. So I think that there's a lot of ways in which this thing is kind of rearing its ugly head, and I think um to add another tool, and I think maybe Mo kind of touched on it, is I think definitely leaning on our networks, where there's definitely been folks who have been able to provide an alternative lender, for example, where we didn't necessarily need to go the SBA route. And at least some other folks who have had relationships or work with other folks at NJTPA. So an airport community Newark project that we were working on was able to get funds from, another grant or foundation to kind of plug in some gaps.
I'll just say quickly from Boston. Remarkably, the mayor just talked about our AAA bond rating and our city's finances. Like, we've been incredibly fortunate, like many cities that are totally reliant on property taxes, that the revenue base for the city and the operating budget and the even borrowing for the city is really, really healthy. And so there's really dire circumstances, and yet there are actually many cities, I think, that are, in spite of everything, in a stronger financial position to weather the storm. We are reallocating, like our rainy day fund. Our surplus is being allocated to a housing accelerator fund to invest in housing projects that have been permitted but not moving, in order to provide essentially like gap financing. So we're taking an equity stake. It's like a $110 million fund. We're taking an equity stake in projects to get them like moving. We created the Boston Acquisition Fund, which is a philanthropically funded and hospital funded $17 million fund for acquisitions to like take housing off the speculative market. But it was put together in anticipation of ARPA money ending, not actually, like, everyone saw that coming independent of the Trump administration. And that's just sort of like one small step that the city took, knowing the ARPA money was getting spent down and we needed to be creative about new funding sources for housing. And then I would say on the planning side, all the budget so far, all the budget for planning and engagement and the external contracts for that work, for the bigger pieces, the stuff we don't do internally in our urban design work. And we have a big green and well growing, like land use and parks, private public parks planning and access, and all that stuff's still fully funded. So I recognizing how many organizations have been really badly hit, but some folks were doing anticipatory work, thinking about, if not this moment, the absence of the really sort of big federal dollars. And so we're in a, for now, good position. And the money for the things that we all care about, and engagement and planning, is still there.
We have a few more minutes. I would love if we have a couple more questions. Do our speakers have questions for each other?
No question, but I just want to say that just the fact that we're kind of all here, and it's great to hear that everybody's doing the work still, kind of similar to what Ifeoma was saying in terms of just the changes in politics and what we have to deal with across the U.S. It's still great that we're still on the ground doing this kind of work. So no, I really enjoyed the presentations.
I have one question. I'm curious if any of your work or models have been replicated in other cities. Isaiah, I'm thinking like this would be such a cool event series to build in Philadelphia and across the country. Is anybody else doing it?
What, First Fridays or
Not
happy
First
hour?
Fridays, the happy hour.
Oh, I'm like, I would imagine so. I'm like, First Friday is not an original idea. And Philadelphia's First Fridays is the grandfather of Newark's First Fridays, and Oakland is the grandmother. I consider myself the steward. In relation to happy hour, I don't want to say that Philadelphia doesn't need it, but I feel like Philly has like so many different uh spaces in communities that it may exist, but it may not be as broad in how we are servicing folks. Because I feel like with happy hour, for example, there's such a thirst for safe spaces that you gotta it's almost like the subway and right outside of this wine shop. And if you can catch the New York analogy. But I think even from that, you have folks who are regularly finding themselves in a corner to talk about the upcoming council politics, who's running to replace the mayor if he wins the governorship. So there's some spicy conversations that's happening in this corner. Three other people who are at their highball bistro table with the headphones on, like, don't talk to me, I'm doing work. So there's definitely various folks who come to our little stoop is what we call it. But I think that there's probably a need for Newark to have more spaces akin to Philadelphia, in that I know that there's even such a niche. I'm not talking about New York, such a niche where there's like late night front of house, sort of like what is it, the folks who work in like the food industry, meeting up after they get off work around the same time that folks who are writers and looking to write in the midnight hours. It's so niche and like carved out and developed in certain circles that um I think the reverse might be needed, where there's more people of disparate places coming together, as much as like these um little pockets that I think maybe you can find a little easier in Philly than New York.
Curious for you, Marita, too. Same question.
I haven't seen it necessarily, and not that I think I would see it, because it's almost like a brainchild of how my mind, like all my roles and my journeys needed to happen for civically to get to what it was. So I needed to be like elected and realize, get that wake up call, like, oh, not everybody's coming to council meeting, bring it there, then all those things. Because how I started in like my career, I'm thinking I'm going to be a licensed professional counselor. So I didn't see this unfolding. So everything kind of just has happened as I go along. But one of the beautiful things about civically and the concept is that it isn't, Wilkinsburg isn't the only place that needs it. So even though we may be right now the only kind of iteration of it, everybody can use that, especially now everybody can use a free store. Everyone can have more focus on civic and education program, like that whole kind of conglomerate. So I've been spending my mom moved to Charlotte about 5 years ago. And so I've been spending more time there and making some connections with folks in the greater Charlotte area to kind of see how I can plug in. Cause I never want to go to a place and be like, y'all need this, y'all need that. Like it's just more innately, but there's definitely a need. So, and again, in our name, we're not just Wilkinsburg based, it's civically. So that can be everywhere. So I would love to see, work with folks to get this on a national level, because I believe it's cyclical and all of these things are needed.
Thank you all again. We have two more of these this year. This is the second of the four, so we're trying to do these on a quarterly basis. And thank you all for volunteering and for presenting, and for everyone in attendance being present. We will gather up the slideshows and share those back, and then we'll put the recording on our site, and I will drop into the chat here where you'll be able to find that. But there is just one final thing. Our editorial team is eager to hear about individuals or organizations responding to federal level issues. So if you know of any examples, we'd love to hear them. And your suggestions could help us shape future stories and inspire potential speakers for our webinars. So we know a lot of people are being impacted right now. We know a lot of our vanguards are shifting roles, and there's just a lot happening. So we want to be a place of support. We also want to be a place where we can continue to show solidarity and share the challenges that folks are facing, as well as uplift the solutions that everyone is doing and working on, and bringing to life with your hard work. So thank you all again. We will conclude our session now and be in touch soon. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.
Safe travels.